It was August 1957, and Ruth Bennett and her friend Sylvia Woods were spending their summer vacation close to Elkstone on the Derbyshire moors in England. Sylvia was about the same age as Ruth, and they searched in vain for a secret passage that was supposedly hidden in the old farmhouse, but found nothing but a few hibernating badgers. Going back to the house, they had a dinner of home-grown vegetables, apple pie, and cream under the candles and a kerosene lamp. Ruth asked Mr. Woods to tell the legend of the moor. He lit his pipe, and the two families came around for the story. Mr. Woods began, in his deep, pleasant voice, to tell them a horror story. There seemed to be a bottomless pool somewhere on the highest hill of the moor, and in that pool was something that could take someone's life with a single look. It was a mermaid with mesmeric eyes, and any man who looked at them when the creature rose from the water at night had to go into the pool and drown himself. Ruth's mother seemed curious about the story, or maybe she was worried about it, scared for her children, and asked the old farmer point blank if it had actually happened, and he claimed that it had really happened, and not so long ago. The previous spring, Mr. March disappeared on his way home from the market. The next morning, the tracks of his horse and cart were found on the moors leading to the pool. According to Woods, it was all covered in the nearby newspaper. Woods proved it by finding an actual clip and showing it to Margaret. It was all a little too real. Ruth's father asked if Mr. Marsh couldn't have just gone the wrong way and accidentally fallen into the pool, prompting Woods to give him a long, hard look before standing up, putting more wood onto the stove, and saying he really could have, but he didn't. With that, he bade the two children a stern good night, and they had no choice but to end the night. Going to their shared bedroom, Ruth was whispering to Sylvia. She asked why, in theory, Mr. Marsh couldn't just fall into the pool, where Sylvia blinked her eyes, very similar to Mr. Wood's eyes at her father earlier in the evening, and delivered the chilling revelation that there was a fence around the pool. The horse and the carriage disappeared in front of the fence somehow, and logically, Mr. March would have to deliberately climb over the fence to drown in the pool. Why would he have done that? Ruth shivered when her mother came into the room to say goodnight. Ruth told her she wanted to see the pool. Her mother agreed and went to talk to her father. The next morning after breakfast, Ruth's parents told Woods that they were going to visit the mermaid pool. Mrs. Woods became pale, and Mr. Woods asked them to come back at dusk if they really wanted to go to the damn pool. Her father nodded and went to grab his camera. He returned with a heavy raincoat and told the other two to bring raincoats and slippers. A little later, the family went to the moors to look for a mysterious pool. They found the pool. It was only about 8 miles across the moors of Elkstone. Ruth stood high on the hill as the daylight faded, looking into the water through the fog. Ancient legends of the swamps ran through her mind as she felt a chill run down her spine. She was standing on the fence with her father. Her mother was just a short distance away. Adjusting the camera, her mother told Ruth to step away from the pool and her father to look down into the water as if trying to see the mermaid. It was a fun photo opportunity, nothing more. Just as she finished speaking, a gust of wind came out of nowhere and grabbed his raincoat, throwing it into the dark water below. It slowly sank, one section at a time. Jim was white as a sheet as he watched the coat vanish. He slowly turned to the pool and put one foot on the wooden bars of the fence he was about to climb over. His wife and daughter ran to him. His wife grabbed his hand and shouted a warning about the mermaid. He turned to them with a terrible blank face. Ruth had never seen anything like it and never wanted to see it again. She was horrified. It seemed her father had abandoned them and went somewhere we couldn't follow. Ruth took his other hand, and the pair gently led the spellbound man away from the pool. He shook his head and slowly regained consciousness. Recognizing his horrified family again, the three of them ran down the hill away from the pool and were greeted at the bottom by Mr. Woods and his horse and carriage. He called out to them and said he realized he should probably look for them. The three climbed into the cart gratefully, while Ruth's father shivered. They sat there dumbstruck for a moment. Woods ordered the woman to give the father the tea under the carriage seat and wrap him in an extra blanket he had brought. They sat there in stunned silence for a moment before Woods told them to do it at once. Her father was a sergeant major in the British Army and commanded a squad during World War II. He was not easily frightened. He had his life threatened many times, and yet he openly admitted how frightened he was looking into the pond when the family returned to the house. When they told Mrs. Woods about what happened in the pool, she only said, "You're lucky." Leonard H. Stringfield has been interested in investigating reports of UFO activity since his own close encounter on August 28, 1945, while in the Air Force in World War II. He and a group of 12 other specialist pilots were approaching Iwo Jima, Japan, when they each encountered 3 teardrop-shaped shiny objects that caused havoc on their navigation systems and even the engine of the plane they were flying, nearly sending it crashing out of the sky. From then on, Leo decided to devote his life to tracking UFO reports and the government's apparent search for the wreckage. But one report delivered to him in 1989 by a completely reliable person who was a senior U.S. Army officer in the Vietnam War really stood out because of how disturbing its impact was. Leo had been in contact with his source for several years before he apparently decided to investigate what really happened all those years ago in the jungles of Cambodia in April 1972. U.S. Special Operations troops were moving through the Cambodian jungle towards the Vietnamese border to track an enemy outpost that had intercepted classified military signals. However, they were caught off guard by the shocking sight of a circular object made of some highly reflective material. The body of the strange object was so reflective that it effectively acted as a mirror. It sat on a tripod, like landing in the clearing in front of them, and it was about 50 feet in diameter. A deep rumbling sound was heard from the landed ship, causing the strange feelings of unease and nausea in the witnesses. The object was surrounded by several humanoid figures with large hairless heads and deep black eyes. These seemingly alien visitors engaged in a grotesque activity, simultaneously loading various human body parts and undressed corpses into large metal bins sealing them. The bodies appeared to be from both sides of the war. Leo's anonymous informants telling him they were a mixture of Vietnamese and white and black American soldiers. The men's military training aided them in this truly nasty situation as they instinctively moved behind nearby foliage for cover and quickly opened fire on the aliens. However, this was largely pointless as the creatures appeared to be protected by armor suits. Despite this, 3 aliens were taken down by headshots, and another was apparently accidentally hit by fire from his companions. In the chaos, it was said that one of the human soldiers lost his life and several others were badly injured by a smoke weapon fired from inside the saucer. Now, with one deceased and several serious injuries, the men decided to hastily withdraw from the scene, after which the aliens took advantage of the opportunity to do the same. They ran towards their craft, and an opening appeared on its side into which the creatures quickly climbed into, carrying the bins filled with bodies. The hatch closed quickly, and the UFO suddenly took off, passing through the jungle, accelerating rapidly and disappearing completely within seconds. The crew, traumatized by the unearthly encounter, quickly reported back to their camp by radio and explained what had just happened. Some senior military officials seemed to know that similar incidents had already occurred, and members of the group who emerged unscathed from the strange incident were quickly flown to a military base in South Vietnam. Here they were interrogated by a group of highly suspicious characters who appeared to be intelligence agents of some sort and warned of the potentially life-threatening consequences they would face if they ever published their experiences. According to Leo's informants, some of the men were put under deep hypnosis with the intention of creating false memories to bury their true memories of the confrontation. Although the story may seem extremely sensational, Leonard Stringfield maintained its authenticity until he passed away in 1994. It was around 1980, and Fernando Neves was enjoying the Venezuelan sunshine when his boat drifted down the Orinoco. He was only 25 miles south of Puerto Ayacucho, the largest city in the Amazonas state, and he was enjoying a nice day of hunting. However, his composure ended when he saw a large furry creature on the shore. Curious about the humanoid in front of him, he steered his boat closer to the shore and became increasingly aware of the noxious odor emanating from the being. Soon he noticed that 2 more creatures could be seen among the leaves of the forest. He described them as over 5 feet tall and covered in reddish hair. What happened next is unclear, but it can be assumed that Neves quickly left the scene, as any sane person would do when faced with 3 near-human-sized monkeys. In 1985, another resident of Puerto Ayacucho cleared the forest with a bulldozer to make way for a new section of road. As he stopped the machine for a breather, a loud scream caught him off guard. Shortly thereafter, he encountered a 5-foot-tall primate-like creature with red hair. Mark and Kiri Zeaton Miller were heading down the Orinoco River. They decided to stay in an unnamed village where the community leader told them about the time he encountered a giant monkey while hunting. He said it was about the same height as him, making it about 5 feet tall, and it was covered in red hair. He reportedly took the life of the creature but refused to take its body back to the village, fearing it was a bad omen. Finally, a jungle pilot named Rodriguez, who was quite famous in the area, said he found tracks of the mysterious monkey creatures in the sand on his runway around 1989, the tracks were apparently turned inward, and Rodriguez could estimate that the animal that made them must have weighed between 80 and 100 kilograms. Locals are said to have followed these distinct tracks into the forest, but there is no further information to where they led. Probably one of the most probable cryptids to exist, a rare large monkey species in the jungle of Venezuela. 18-year-old Randy Emmerich was with his friends in Perkin, Illinois in the summer of 1972 when they saw a pale ape-like creature. They noticed that the terrifying creature made a loud screeching sound and described it as very large and covered in white hair. They apparently believed that it made its home under a local abandoned house, but there is no indication as to why they came to that conclusion. At first, Emmerich didn't want to announce his discovery for fear of being seen as crazy, but eventually he did. Little did he know that his report would spark a monster hysteria 2 months later. Town officials announced that they had a story about something big swimming in the Illinois River. Just a day later, the police recorded more than 200 calls from terrified townspeople who claimed to have witnessed the creature. If you encounter a creature, calling the police doesn't make much sense. They are law enforcement and there is no law being broken. Am I ignorant? A frantic call was received from a Eureka man who was attending a family birthday party at Fond du Lac Park when he spotted at least one UFO. He and the rest of the group saw strange lights that moved vertically before going behind the trees and disappearing. Those lights left a vapor trail. The police don't know how to handle aliens. Why call them? Other reports included sightings of the monster walking into the woods, roaming backyards, patrolling the riverbank, and even destroying the garden of one unfortunate caller. The police were skeptical of the reports, but recorded them anyway. A local woman was picking berries near an old mine when she encountered the creature. She was so scared that she immediately fled the scene, leaving her berry bag behind. That same evening, the police received 2 more calls from citizens claiming to have seen the creature. It was described as having long U-shaped ears and a red mouth with sharp teeth. It had thumbs with long second knuckles. It has generally been compared to a mixture of an ape and a caveman. Newspaper articles at the time reported that the smell of the monster was comparable to that of a wet dog, a rotten egg, or sulfur. Early articles in the local Daily Times initially suggested that Missouri's Momo monster may have moved to Tazewell County, having been seen just a year before the monster rampage began. A search party eventually even reached the woods of the east trying to find the monster. This group consisted of about 100 armed men and patrolled the dense forest for quite some time before an unfortunate volunteer accidentally fired a weapon, hitting himself in the foot, and the search was immediately called off for health and safety reasons. 19 years later, Randy Emmerich, the first witness, reported to the press that he made the whole thing up. He and his friend apparently made up the whole story to scare another friend who was working late shifts at a local gas station. But that, of course, doesn't explain the other 200 plus reported sightings during the short time period. So what the hell happened in Tazewell County in the summer of 1972?